clicking or pressing play. You are tuned into The Encourager, and my name is Nehru. I apologize for the background noise, but that is unavoidable, or at least at this time, that's unavoidable. So, hope everyone's doing well, and I wanted to come on and share more encouragement because that's my job. Specifically, I have a question for you, obviously, as the title gives it away. And that is, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? I know I got a job. I know I get a paycheck. But that's a job, right? That's a just over broke J-O-B, okay? That's a job. And just as a side note, having a job will never be financial freedom for you, ever, 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 ever. The tax system is not set up like that, for that, ever, ever. The employee is the low man on the totem pole. If you don't believe me, compare the 700 pages of IRS tax code to the 6,500 page tax code for entrepreneur, business ownership, blah, 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 right? Tax regulations, right? It's extremely lopsided, okay? So being an employee, it's necessary at stages in our life, right? Typically younger than older, but even now, it's even much older. That's why the greeters at Walmart are the age that they are on average, right? Because even now today, unfortunately, because they were employees their entire life, most of them, because they were employees. Again, this is not against employees. It's just saying sewing into certain baskets gets a certain result, okay? And again, the U.S. tax code, I was a tax accountant for the last 13 years, by the way. And so I'm not just saying something that I just read in some article. I lived the occupation. So, yeah, that's long-term. The word pension probably isn't even in a dictionary anymore, because no company does that. They offer you a 401k. Most of them don't even offer that if they match. By the way, if they do, you should probably max all of that out, because granted, they're not giving you the whole basket of peanuts, but whatever peanuts they do give you, I would take those. So until you can get yourself into a better situation where you employ you're the landlord, instead of you giving the landlord, the lord of your land, all of your money, some of your money, a portion of your money, whatever it is, right? Lord over your own land. Right? So, what is my purpose? Why am I here? This is probably, I would suspect, I haven't done a census, but I suspect this is probably the top question for anyone who has a relationship with the Father, with divine source, divine creator, Yahweh God, right? Abba Father. The number one question probably is, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What do you want me to do, Lord? What do you want me to do, God? Where do you want me to go? What job do you want me to take? What business do you want me to open? What am I doing here? Okay, so I'm going to share my story, as I always do, right? If there is a story of mine that I have experience with associated with the subject that I'm talking about, okay? So, what is my purpose? So I'm going to tell you my story, and then hopefully it helps to kind of see, so you can see kind of some indicators for yourself, right? Because that's really what it's about before you get the intuitive download. It really is about paying attention to the indicators that you are getting along the way. And those indicators start from birth. Okay, they start from birth. Okay. So, I think I mentioned in the last video that when I was birthed, and that was 11/29/74, it's the 333rd day of the year, and I was born at 1:07 in the afternoon. All of that makes sense, right? That's a 7, kidney transplant on 7/7/17, blah, 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 blah. You guys have heard me talk about that. Probably every video. So the synchronicities and all of that stuff, right? Those are the indicators. Those are the things. That's why I mention those things all the time. Those are the indicators. So, getting to really kind of narrow it down, filter out all the external. If you did not watch the last video, it was focused on disassociation. So getting rid of all of the external influences that are falsely a part of your foundation and a part of your belief system. So that's the first part, okay? You have to get rid of all the junk, all the clutter, things that no longer serve you. That's a great first step. And that might be a 4th step for you. It might be a 50th step for you. But that step is an absolute necessity. Okay? That might involve you leaving the physical place you're in, saying to your sister down the road and your brother and your mom and dad, saying to them, I love you guys, but I really do feel as though my purpose for now is in that state or that city or that country, and that is where I need to go, because that's what's drawing me at this time. That's what's pulling my heart at this time. So I need to go over there. Okay? So I encourage you, if you're at that point, I like giving nudges, not pushes. So here's your nudge. Okay? Take that step. Go ahead. Go ahead. Make the phone call to the loved ones. Let them know. Call the company. Let them know you're going to take the offer. Call the company. Put in the resignation letter, because you're going to start your own. Like, here's my nudge. Okay? Okay? Book the flight one way. Okay? And get excited about what's to come. All right? So, for me, indicators. So, when I was birthed, this is what I mentioned in the last video. And all that I'm going to mention, I think, obviously things come up intuitively all the time when I'm talking or recording these videos. And sometimes they even surprise me. The last video, I ended up honoring my dad, who took my first wife and my daughter, and I never reconnected with them, and they're still up there wherever he is in Detroit or Ohio or something like that. I don't know where they are. So yeah, right? But in the midst of that, I knew for a fact that when I started speaking, and then I started getting emotional, which I was definitely not expecting, right? But that's me being authentic. It happens, right? Why would I try to hide that? It obviously was time for it. I hadn't talked to him in 20 years, okay? But I forgive him, because that's my unconditional love. That's my healing language. That's how I alchemize pain, is through my unconditional love. Okay? So, when I was birthed, the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck and my left arm. And today, on my left arm, I have something that looks like a burn mark, and it goes all the way up from my shoulder, all the way down to my fingers, and it's a discoloration. I forget what's the skin condition when parts of your skin start turning pale white? I forget what that's called, but it's not that, but the entire patch, and it's really kind of like a web of some sort on my left arm, right? And like I said, it could look like burn marks, right? Really old burn scars and things like that. But that's where the umbilical cord was wrapped around my left arm. Okay? So, from the womb, the enemy was trying to handicap me. Okay? So, there had to be an extra great purpose for me. Okay? Because if it's wrapped around your neck alone, that alone, if you look up the spiritual meaning of that, again, I mentioned this in the last video, spiritual meaning of that is significant. And I would look up that, if that's part of you, look at if those wrapped around your leg or your neck or your arm, which arm, I would look that up, find out what that means for you. If there are any other complications, if you almost didn't make it, whatever, right? Look, go inside, find out what that is, because all of it's an indication, all of it, okay? So I personally was trying to be taken out before I was even brought in. so I knew, well, I know today, I understand today, that there's a great purpose for me, and there's a great purpose for everyone. Mine just happens to start at birth, right? And the truth is, everyone starts at birth because the enemy's just waiting, right? Because everyone birthed, no matter how they come into the world, everyone birthed has a purpose. If they last 2 seconds, that's unfortunate and condolences. Or if they last 140 years, I say that number for a reason. I'm not going to get into that. Yes. So it doesn't matter. However long they're here, or if you're Methuselah, 900 and, 77, 89, how many ever years he lived, right? Whatever. It's purposed. Your time here is purposed, right? So then, as a child, I dealt with seizures until I was 8 years old. And that was the last time I had my last seizure. And ironically, my dad had seizures until he was 9, ironically, right? So I don't know what brought about his healing. I don't know if they just stopped. That would actually be an interesting question to find out. No one knows the answer to that I'm in communication with, so we can't find that out today. And his parents have since long passed. Yeah. So seizures up until I was 8. And I was matured quickly as a kid. And again, your natural and your spiritual. So pay attention to both. Your physical environments are indications as well. So I am the eldest of 17. Whatever number you are in your sibling line, that's significant. Whatever date you were born on, whatever calendar date. So if you look at a number calendar, a day number calendar, 1 through 365, look on there and find out what date you are. 222, 111, right? If you're 444, I would redo my calculations. It's not that many days in a year. So, yes, so find out 10, 13, 45, whatever the day is, and then look up that angel number and find out what that is. That's an indicator. That's an indicator. Okay? All right. So, the things that we cannot control, here is a key. Here is a key. So the things that we cannot control are the things that are divinely guided. I'm going to say it again. The things that we cannot control are the things divinely guided. So, what does that mean? The person who rear-ended you today, believe it or not, divinely guided. Believe it or not, because you might have crossed the intersection and a semi might have smashed you and ended your natural life. It's purposed. Telling you. Okay? Telling you. You never know. You never know. So trust it. Anything that is out of your control is divine purpose. Don't doubt it. Go with it. Okay? So yes. So so I had to mature really, really early. Okay? Because up until the age of 11, again, numbers are significant. 11, right? 11. I was born in November, right? 11. And finding out this is a side note, and finding out your life path number, right? My date of birth is the 29th. That is also an 11. Create a map, create a me map, maybe that should be a thing, a me map, okay, and start writing these things down. Get to know yourself, Not your legal name on your birth certificate. Nah, not that person. The one who's been living since the beginning of time. Get to know that person, that you, because that's the real you. Not the exterior, not the one that you pour the burgers and fries and steaks and shakes and all of that. Not that. That's not it. Okay. So that was until the age of 8, but I had to mature very fast. We lived, like I said, me and my younger brother, 13 months younger than I am, who passed in 2021 on 8/4, at the age of 45. I love you, Matt, and that's forever, brother, and that's never gonna change. So, yeah. So with that, moved with my dad at the age of 11, but in the projects with my mother, I had to mature fast because she needed my help. She needed my help when she would go to work, knock my brother and sister upside the head because we had to clean the house. Because she would leave me instruction, Kevin, you guys do this, do that, right? And I'll be honest, really, really, really honest, she would tell you the same thing. The other two were kind of knuckleheads, One was easily misled. Unfortunately, that was my brother. And then my sister was a hellion. Literally, she ran away multiple times, ended up being taken by the state until she was 18. Just reckless girl, reckless for no reason. Just, she was born that way. She was, I don't know, born dealing with karmic debt or something. She was just born that way. And she's that way today with 8 kids. Today. She's still that way in her early 40s. So hey, what are you gonna say? Right? I'm not in communication with her or anything. I haven't talked to her in, good Lord, I don't even know when. And I don't even ask my mother about it. There's something going on and Holy Spirit wants me to know about it, he'll have my mother tell me. So just because of her energy, I'm not interested in that. So yes. And you need to have, I'm going to say this, you need to have a strong cutoff game if you want to find out what your true purpose is. If you want to walk fully in your purpose, you have to have a strong cutoff game, because there are going to be people that you start relationships with. What's the song? A time to live, a time to die, a time to be born, a time to, like that. So I figure it's an old song. Yep, right. There's a time for everything. That's in Scripture. There's a time. That's why leaves change, seasons, right? All that, right? So, the 2 states that I've lived in the last 30 years, however, no, I've lived in 3. I lived in Georgia for about 6 months back in 2012. Yeah, right? So you have to have a strong cutoff game if you want to fulfill your, and that doesn't mean be mean and evil and whatever else. I tell people that I'm not angry, but I'm serious. Okay? And for me, that's something that I've added to my stoic nature. Okay? I'm not angry, but I am serious. And I am serious. I want you to know that, hey, I'm serious. Right? So don't during one of the videos yesterday, I made mention of Morgan Freeman, and I don't know why he came to mind yesterday, but Morgan Freeman, and how some people have a B face. I'm not going to say the word, but that face, a resting B face, right? I'll be honest, when I'm not clowning or laughing, the moment I laugh, right, the sun comes out in regards to who I really truly am. But if I'm just sitting there, right, driving down the street, somebody might look over and be like, wow, he looks mean. If I'm just, I don't know, sitting in Starbucks, I don't go to Starbucks, sitting in Starbucks, well, I don't go there very often. It's rare. I shouldn't say I don't go there. It's extremely rare. So anyway, I'm sitting in Starbucks, right? Some women might see me and see that I'm my face, right? And be like, I don't know. She might want to say something, but I look unapproachable. But that is not on purpose to look unapproachable. That is, don't come at me with some bullshit. Okay? And people need to see you that way. Because if they don't, you will become a doormat. And all they'll do is treat you like one. And what do people do with doormats? They step on them, right? They leave them outside, right? That's what people do to doormats. And then eventually they toss them out and just go get another one. Right? Wipe all their mud, dirt, poop, right? All that junk on you, right? You're not a doormat, okay? You are the door. Remember that. So, when dealing with the question of what's my purpose, that's another key. You have to have a strong cutoff game. Okay. So I had to grow up very early, living with my mom. So we walked over a mile one way to school, okay, from the projects, because the bus would not come to the projects, not even in the 80s. So we walked over a mile one way to school, even in the wintertime, in Illinois. Yep, we did. And in fact, we lived in Joliet, and the school was in Lockport, just to show you how far apart they are. Okay? So, I had a key to the house and all. I had to bring my brother and sit, like all of that, right? I was 8, right? I'm 6 years old, not quite 6 years older than my sister. Yes, not quite. Her birthday is April of 80. Mine is November of 74. Yes, so not quite full 6 years, 5 and change. So, yep, I had to make sure they got to school, walk her to her little class, elementary and all that. My brother, right, we were in the same building during those years at that school. But yeah, had to wait for my sister, bring her home, had a key to the house, all of those responsibilities. My mother would ask me how to spend her money, right? So I had to be a man long before I was going to say needed to, but it was on purpose. Okay? So I did need to be those things at that time. Why? Because she needed me to be. Right? She birthed me on purpose. Okay? So I was birthed there for a reason. And certainly one of those reasons is to help. Right? So, but when I moved with my father, between my 5th and 6th grade year, he told me, and again, as I shared, he was a polygamist and he did a lot of evil things. Lied, cheated, still got a 15-year-old pregnant. That's a bulk of the reason why he's serving 44 to 66 years, amongst other things. There's all sorts of junk. But again, there were wisdom tokens, right, that he would drop. Okay? And so one of those things that he told me when I moved with him when I was 11, he said, you're not going to be watching your brother and sister. And at that time, he was with the woman who he had 2 kids with. My other 2 brothers, or 2 more, 1 more brother and 1 more sister. I'll say it like that. Okay? And they were born in the early 80s. Okay? He said, You will not have to watch them. That is not your job. You didn't birth them. You will not be babysitting. And I thank him so much for that, because I got tired of having to watch my brothers. I really did, because there are parts of me that wanted to be a kid, right? However, my mother making me making me joint head of the house or whatever, right? That was out of my control. Okay? So it was purposed. It was meant for me to do that, if nothing else, to bless her and to help her. I remember her telling me a story. She said, when we first moved into the projects, my brother was too small. We moved into the projects, I was probably maybe 5, maybe? Yeah, maybe 5. And he wasn't old enough to carry anything, so I might not have even been 5. Right? I might have been like 4 or something like that. He wasn't even able to help. But I remember my mother telling me the story. She said she called her aunt, her sister, my aunt, who lived in the same project, and not even an 18th of a mile away in the same project, to come over and help. None of them came over to help. She has 2 older, they've since passed. Love you, Troy and Daryl. 2 of them have since passed, but she had 2 sons there who were much older than I was, so who could lift more than I could. Well, I'm just 4 or 5 years old. None of them came over, so she was like, you know what? We're just going to do it ourselves. And she said, Kevin, you literally helped me carry everything up the stairs. Mattresses, everything. Right? So. By the way, my dad's family calls him Kevin. I don't know why that is. I never understood that story. It's kind of interesting. So anyway, but that's not his name. So that was purpose, because it was out of my control. She needed me at that time. Okay. So I was thankful when I moved with my dad, and I no longer had to do that. I was glad now I did get a house key. And you know what's interesting? Of all the time that I had a house key in the projects, I never lost it. I moved with my dad, and it seems like I had to have lost like 4 keys within a school year's time. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous. I mean, today it's embarrassing. When I was a kid, I was scared. I'm like, I keep losing keys. When somebody finds it and finds our house, and right? But that was wild. I still don't. That's just interesting. Why was I losing all those keys when I didn't lose one at all with my mom? There's something there. I don't know what that is. There's something there. Maybe it'll come to me fully one day. So, yes. So I was glad he told me I didn't have to do that anymore. All I had to do was clean up after the dog. We had a Doberman, and take out the trash and keep my room clean. Got it. All right? No babysitting duties for this kid. He said, I want you to laugh, because he saw I would be watching cartoons with my brothers and sisters. I wasn't laughing. He has a bachelor's degree in child psychology, right? That's how he's able to manipulate people, by the way. But anyway, so he used it for evil, but this time he used it for good, and I'm sure that's not the only time he used it for good, right? Because he wisely advised me at other times too. So, yeah, right? He was like, you need to laugh. Go outside, ride your bike, man. Roll around in the grass. You are way too serious. He literally told me this one day. He set me down, right? And I was 11 or 12 years old. He said, Kevin, you're way too serious, buddy. Go out, have some fun, be free. Okay? You're not an adult. So, thanks, Dad, as the honoring of him this day continues. And you know what's interesting? He might be about to pass. Maybe that's why I'm doing this. And it might sound like I said that really easily, but it's just because of my disassociation with the energy of him. But that just came to me, so that's possible. He might be getting ready to pass on. Again, he's incarcerated. I haven't talked to him for 20 years. I doubt seriously if I'm even on his call sheet thing or whatever that is. I don't know what they call that. So anyway, yeah. Oh, by the way, if you are sending this out into the universe, if you are, by the way, then first of all, I pray that you've awakened and complete and full repentance and resurrection has happened in you. And all the religiousness, all the witchcraft, all the manipulation, all the spiritual spell work, I hope that's all done away with. And even though you're physically incarcerated, I hope you're spiritually free today, sir. I really do hope that for you. And this is the second video today that I'm speaking on him. This is significant. This is significant. Thank you, Divine Creator. This is significant that outside of sharing his polygamous lifestyle, there's no association with him for me. Today is significant. 9/27. That's a 3. Just saying. So, yes. So I was glad about that. So then, I remember asking my dad, because of all the religiousness, because again, he was a pastor, and at that time the church was in Bolingbrook, Illinois. I remember asking him if Christians can take a break. I remember asking him, I literally asked him this. Outside at the townhouse we were living in. I think we're in a backyard. I literally came out there and asked him. I said, Dad, can Christians take a break? And he kind of laughed. Like, what, son? Take a break? No. There's no, you can't, no. Yeah, you can't take a vacation. Right? And this is what I got from that later in years after I remembered to look back on that question. Because the religious laws are so daunting and ridiculous, especially back then, they were so dumb that even as a kid I felt burdened. My spirit felt burdened. What? You mean I can't go watch a movie at a movie theater because the Lord thinks that's a sin? Oh, man. What if it's a cartoon? Nope. Can't go to the movie theater. What? Okay. Sister got an F in gym class. Why? She can't wear shorts. Why? Pastor says she can't wear shorts. Said it's a sin. Dumbasses. Okay? And I say that with true, fervent passion. Fervent passion. Okay? Right? Because all they're doing is raping the Word of God. Stop it. Okay? So, yeah, that's all they're doing. That's all they're doing. And people buying it up. By the thousands. By the thousands, Creflo. By the thousands, Joel. By the thousands. Copeland. By the thousands. Yep, Prince. By the thousands. They buying up all the garbage and the rape word you're selling. So, I knew from an early age that the rules and laws of what they call Christianity, that wasn't going to fly for this kid. I knew it early on. I didn't understand it, but I knew early on. Okay? I've always been a dreamer. Dreamed heavily. I've always been a dreamer. Always. I honestly believe there have been years that I've dreamt every night. And woke up remembering parts of those every night. I dreamed all the time, right? And so to bring this point home further in relationship to my dad, so when I was a kid, And I'm sure I mentioned this in the videos of talking about his polygamous lifestyle and all that. I don't recall, obviously. But as a kid, once I moved with him, and then I became a part of I was closer to his energy, then I began to have dreams about him. And I would have dreams that we were all over the place. We were in the street sometimes we were in a boxing ring, sometimes we were in the house, but I would be just going at him, wailing on him, just smashing his face in. And I'm talking Tyson peekaboo punches. I'm just laying it, wham, wham. I'm just giving it to him, left and right, left and right, left and right, right? I'm having these dreams when I'm 11 and 12 years old, 13 years old. And I'm waking up praying to God, please forgive me, before I go to school. Oh my God, why do I keep having these dreams? Why? Right? I love my dad. He was my best friend, right? Until he took my wife, and then even still, I still talked to him. I still went over to his house when she was sitting right there. Still. Okay? Eventually I got wise and stopped going over to his house or communicating with him. Don't feel bad if you have to leave your parents, men and women. Parents, don't feel bad if you have to leave your child. They're acting a fool. Now, obviously, I'm not speaking of parents who have kids in their custody. That's not what I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about adult sons and daughters. Okay? Don't leave your infant. I'm not even going to go there. I will get irate if I go there and start getting into the energy of what happens to kids. I can't go there. I cannot even. Because that is another leg of my mission. And that is to save as many kids as possible from themselves. And what do I mean from themselves? So, teenagers primarily do not realize the protection that they have of their parents. They think it's restriction. They think it's jail time. They think it's an imprisonment. And sometimes it is, obviously, because parents do some dumb ass stuff when it comes to their kids. I'm telling you, they do some dumb stuff. Dumb stuff. They leave their kids with irresponsible people. People do dumb ass stuff with their kids. Drive them into lakes with them in the car. People do. I can't go. I gotta get away from there. So, but that is part of the leg of my purpose, is to save as many of those situations as possible, or prevent. And that means whether it's the adult that's being irresponsible or the child that does not recognize their protection when their parents say, no, I do not want you dating him. Why? Because he's 25 and you're 14. So then we see tomorrow in the paper where that jack-off convinced her to unalive her parents in order to be with him. Ass white. Okay? So, again, I get irate with stuff like that, so that's why I gotta get away from that. So that's why that's just... yeah, that fire gets stoked real fast. That fire gets stoked with rain. So yes, right? So I knew early on, I knew that I was a very strong person spiritually. I don't know what it was. I just knew for a fact that I was a soldier. I was born knowing that. I just knew that I was born wearing OD green. I knew it. I just knew it. I felt it from when I was a child. My mother will tell you, he's not afraid of anything, anyone. He does not care. He is not afraid. And some might think that's foolish, and some might be, oh, you're afraid of something. I might be afraid of something, right? But I don't know what that is. I might be allergic to something, but I have yet to find that out, and neither will I find it out, honestly, because this body's protected. I'm not allergic to anything. Okay? There are things that are allergic to me because of the vibe that I come with, my energy, my light. They're allergic to me. All right? So, yeah, I always knew that. And that's where the internal work comes in. Okay? So be honest with yourself. Right? So there are things that I was also ignorant in, weak in, unaware in, right? So I am a huge giver, right? I am. I give and give and give. Today, that is managed well, okay? But when I was a tax accountant, I can't tell you how many tax season, every tax season probably, I started with Liberty, so not back then, back in '09, because obviously they don't allow that. What I'm about to share. But once I went out on my own, I couldn't tell you the number of free tax returns I did. Every year. Every year I would do some, because that's just me. Like, oh man. Whenever I would feel it, I would hear them, listen to their energy, I would look at them. However the intuition or however Holy Spirit spoke to me or came to me and said, this is the person to bless with this, I would do it. When I was at the Rock, right? I would, and that's the Rock of Central Florida. By the way, that's the house that I left after 20 years. Just September of last year. So, I would, and I have, and this is not bragging, right? Again, I'm a giver, okay? So this is just giving examples of how giving of a heart I have, okay? And that's, again, that's coupled with my unconditional love. So for a long time, and I remember it started back, I'd have to go back in journals and think, but it started a long time ago. Trying to think, the first kid that I sown into was 2000. I think he has to be close to getting his driver's license now. It's been a long time. I mean, but I remember when the revelation came to me, so probably, and it wasn't at birth, but it was, he might have been maybe 5 or 6 when Holy Spirit told me this. He said, I want you to sow into that kid. And he showed me a picture online of the brand of the brand of sportswear and all of that this kid liked. And I didn't ask his parents about it or anything, right? I was like, okay. So every month for that year, I don't remember what year that was, 2013, 14, something like that. So, yeah, maybe 11. But yes, so every month I would get him a gift and I would give it to his parents, or I would have it delivered to their house for the entire year. And I did that for, I want to say 3 different families at that house over the last decade. And again, I don't say that to brag. I say that because that's an indicator, right, of my purpose, right? And I am called to be that, the huge giver, the abundant giver. That's who I'm called to be, right? And so without expectation of anything in return, ever. Okay? So let's see. Also, I've always had a hunger for business, right? I remember growing up in Illinois before we relocated to Florida when I was 16. I remember we would take trips to Chicago from the suburbs, and I remember always being fascinated by the skyscrapers and business, and man, what does it take to build a business like that? I didn't know what the business was in the building, but it looked amazing, right? Because you have this 45-story building, right? Man, what's in the sales tower? What businesses are in there? Man, and I probably at the time thought it was just one big business, but obviously there are many different businesses in that building. So I would think that, right? I was always fascinated with business. I ended up going into accounting and taxes. It's right? And even if it's for a season, it feeds that season and it fulfills that purpose. Okay? So again, never be afraid to let go of what has served its purpose. That's how you stay in yours. Okay? So, another thing, let's see. For me, I'm thinking about my life thus far. Oh, you might find this interesting, funny, quirky, weird, I don't know, something else, I don't know. Just kind of weird, right? But when I was in Germany, and my former wife, who went with my dad, she sent me a letter when I was in Germany and told me that she wasn't going to be with me. That's how I found out, by the way. Which again, I don't hold that against her today. But that's how she told me. She sent me a letter. So, and now of course we didn't have mobile phones back then. Well, they were available, but this was 99, 2000. So they weren't quite mainstream yet, fully. And if they were, I don't know, I didn't get one. I don't know. So, yeah, so she sent me that letter. And I remember shortly after she sent me that letter, in the barracks that I lived in, there was a picture on the wall, and I want to say it was a jazz image or something like that. Anyway, I don't know if something fell on the side of the bed. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, I was bent over the bed trying to pick something up or something. Maybe I was fixing the bed. And I put my hand on the wall. And when I put my hand on the picture, the glass broke. And the only part of my hand that got cut is my ring finger of all that glass. And that picture was probably 14 by 16. It was a good sized picture, that glass, right? The only finger, nowhere else on my, and it was on my left hand. Again, my left hand, with the umbilical cord, left hand. A piece of glass, wham, right on my ring finger. So it didn't chop my ring finger off, but till this day, there is a very obvious mark on my ring finger. And I remember, even in that, and I was living a heathenistic life back then, right? After she sent me that letter, I went, a little playboyish. So, because I was angry and I honestly, I had a disdain for women at that time and wanted to only use them for one thing, which I thought was abusing them, which was wrong, right? Obviously, okay? So yeah, and again, that was while I was in Germany, okay? By the time I got to Fort Stewart in 2000, all of that had left, right? And I was celibate and happy to be and all of that by the time 2000 came around from 98. Okay? So that is an indicator. Okay? And I saw that immediately as this will not be the only trouble that I have in marriage, and wouldn't you know, or with relationships, and wouldn't you know, many, many years later, I would meet a twin flame, and she would blow the doors off this guy, and change my life forever. And I say that we're not together, but I say that from a spiritual point of view. Okay? I would not be today who I am without meeting my twin flame and going through a spiritual awakening and dark night of the soul. I would not be who I am today. I would still be that dude or some version of it. Okay? Okay? So today I am single, celibate, and happy to be. Okay? Focused on what the Father, Divine Source wants me to be focused on. Right? My purpose, being the encourager. Right? So, that has told a story. right? That glass falling on my ring finger, right? I just told the story, okay? So, I ended up going into school during the Great Recession of 08, 09, back to school and studying accounting, okay? While studying accounting, I contracted a rare autoimmune virus called IgG4 nephropathy. And it is a rare autoimmune virus that typically attacks males, first of all, and brown-skinned males. So Caucasians are not the majority for this autoimmune virus for whatever reason, right? Just like we tend to have a bit more, brown folks tend to have a few more issues with cholesterol level and stuff because of the junk that most brown people put into their bodies. Oh, by the way, side note, in order to clear your energy, taking care of your physical body is part of that. So you might need to do actually a physical detox, cleanse, okay? Because that is also part of it. All right? So, so all of those things were indicators for what my purpose was to be. I've always been a fighter. I've always been kind of I was going to say a vigilante. I've always been a freedom fighter. I've always been for justice. I've always been a justice fighter. Always. Right? That's just how I am. I started out protecting my brothers and sisters. I've always been that way. That's an indicator. Right? If that is you, I can almost assure you, I can't 100%, but I can almost assure you, you're meant to be a leader. You're a general. Okay? If that is you. Right? I once heard someone say that you can tell where your position is, what's your position in each phase of your life if you pay attention to the past positions in life. So, someone who is in second command at their first job, and then their second job, and they might skip their third job, but then their fourth job, they're also second command, fifth job, second in command. That's who they're meant to be, right? They're meant to be the second in charge. That is, right? They're meant to be on staff, the second in charge. That's what that means. Same thing with the leader, with the visionary, right? All of those things, all indicators. Okay. While I was still in the military, and I knew my heart was yearning for something that was not religious, because when I got out of the military and I knew I was returning to Florida, I gave my dad a call and told him, because it was still I wasn't part of the cult, but obviously I was still considered a part of the family. So yeah. So I called him and told him, because I had gone through a level of spiritual awakening while I was in military intelligence school, truthfully. That's why he pulled me away. All right? Meaning the Father. That's why Divine Source pulled me away. Because I was called back to active duty, because the unit that I was attached to when I was exiting the last 8 months of my original military contract, that was supposed to end at 7 years. Again, there's a 7. You can't, don't overlook those things. Okay, my life path number is 7. Don't overlook those things. So, yeah, I called him, said, hey, miraculously, Divine Sources opened the door and I'm getting out of the military. And it was miraculous, the way it happened. So, it was time. Just like it was time for me to leave Florida. It was time. It was. That land was dry. I wasn't dipping that bucket down, lowering that bucket down into the well, continuing to pull up dirt. That's not me. And truthfully, it's not you either. You just have codependency if you're dealing with that. And that needs to be cut. Okay, that needs to be broken. Okay? So, also, by the way, another indicator for me, so my leadership position was made early on. I'm the eldest of 17, transplant in 2017, right? So, eldest of 17, right? Firstborn, brother and sister responsibilities, okay? Then, when I went into the military, Army basic training is 8 weeks. Mine was at Fort Knox. All right. So yeah, 1995, I leave Florida, go to basic training. 2 weeks into basic training, my drill sergeants tell me that they want me to be the platoon sergeant for the rest of our drill cycle, for the rest of our boot camp. So for the next 6 weeks, I was the platoon sergeant in my unit. And Charlie, I want to say Charlie 246. I want to say Charlie 246. That might not be correct. But the unit that I was attached to in basic training. Okay? So they told me, Private Thomas, I went in as an E1. I did not have college experience. I went in at 20. I had 2 jobs before I went in. Because I don't know, at that time, college wasn't speaking to me. So, I only went to college for tailgate parties. Go Gators. So, don't hold that against me. So, I decided to go into the military, but yes, that's what happened. Okay? So for 6 weeks, last 6 weeks, that sounds funny because that's the majority of the time. So from the 3rd week to the last week, I was the platoon sergeant. Okay? So we get to basic training, we get to graduation day. Again, that's an indicator. I'm meant to lead. And then when I wasn't, the first 2 weeks of basic training that I wasn't, I was the point man. For those of you who are unfamiliar with that, that is the first squad leader. So when you're in a gaggle and you want the soldiers' attention, you yell, fall in, right? All the soldiers come together and they all get in their formation, their squads and blah, 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 right? But the point man, and it could be a female, they're the person who is the first squad leader. They're the point person. So they run up first and stand in front of that in our case, drill instructor, right? And they take their position. And then everybody else fall in behind him, right? So all the other columns and rows, right? That's how it works, right? So for the first 2 weeks, I was the point man. First squad in that platoon. Okay? So that was an indicator to me. And I don't volunteer for these things. Leadership positions, they fall in my lap. I'm a reluctant leader to some degree. I really kind of sit back, do my work, let everybody else who wants to jump at the leadership position, let them have at it, right? Because I always believe that perfect time, if I'm needed, the Father will put me in that place, right? So, it's an indicator. Even with jury duty, the only jury duty I've ever had was a couple of years ago, and it was a murder trial, right? And it was a mistrial during our trial, but the second trial, I say kid, he was probably in his mid-20s, but the crime when he committed, I want to say it was 18, 17, something, he killed his grandmother. And and this happened in Volusia County, in Edgewater. And his name is Patrick Campbell, is the perpetrator. Okay? So he unalived his grandmother. Okay, the neighbor across the street from them has a Ring camera. Right, this is some years ago, but they had a Ring camera. Right, and on the Ring camera, in clear view, you can see him ride up on the bike, blah 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 blah. Right, all that. I don't want to go into the case, but anyway, that's what happened. For those of you who have been on jury duty, you know, you stand up there, the judge is asking you questions. What's your occupation? I don't know, kid. I don't know all the questions that they. I do know they ask occupation. I do know that. Okay, so I'm in there, right, and asking questions. They get down. They have the jury selected. I'm one of the main jurors selected. And it was my first time, so I figured I would be selected. I'd never had jury duty before. And they're trying to decide on who the jury foreman is going to be. And I'm just sitting there. Right? Kind of on, I don't know, do you guys want to take vote? Blah, 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 blah. Just sitting there. And someone says, how about you? And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, why don't you be? Right? It's just, here, lead us. Sure. I must be equipped to, I guess. It landed in my lap. Again, things that are out of your control. Purpose. Right? So I've been in the leadership positions all of my life. Right? Even when employed. The last employment opportunity I had, like full-time, not a consultant or anything like that, I was an accounting manager for a marketing company, right? This is right after my transplant, a month after my transplant. And there's a beautiful story surrounded behind that hiring, because I interviewed for the job 7 months earlier, and the person who they hired did not work out. I was still doing dialysis, and obviously I didn't tell them that, but I was still doing dialysis. They called me 30 days after my transplant when I'm back in Florida. The transplant happened in Pittsburgh. They called me 30 days after I get back from Pittsburgh and says, hey, the person we hired did not work out. We know you were asking a little more money than what we were wanting to spend, or than what we were wanting to pay or compensate for the role. And it was an accounting manager role. Okay? Hired. Okay. And I was the accounting department. Set up their new payroll system and everything. I was that person. Right? There were no employees under me. Okay? That's a leadership position. There's no one else in that department. It's all on me. Okay? Again, I didn't volunteer for that. I interviewed 7-8 months prior. I didn't give it 2 thoughts anymore. You know what I mean? I was just happy to have my kidney transplant, and I was through the roof. So, yeah. So for me, it's always been leadership. It's always been that way. I knew from a kid, I knew that I wanted to be entrepreneur. I wanted to have many businesses, and I will. That's just who I am. I'm not meant to be an employee. If you are meant to be an employee, great, then be faithful at that. And if you're not, but you are currently, stay faithful. Because the seeds you sow today are the fruit that appears tomorrow. Okay? Those are the trees that grow tomorrow, the vines that grow tomorrow. Okay? So be faithful over those things and to those people. I don't care how they treat you. You can change their energy by changing yours. True story. Okay? So, that's another indicator. I was born to lead. Right? And I say it like that because it's a daunting task. You know, I've had a 7-Eleven. I had to fire people. Like, it's a daunting task. Right? To be a leader. It's not easy. That's why typically people don't volunteer for it. And if they do, most of the time they're not the best person for it if they're volunteering. Typically. Especially if if there's multiple options. Right? So I knew from a childhood that I was born to lead. I've always been passionate. I've always been loving. I've always easily forgiven. I've always easily forgiven. All right? Forgave my dad. Took a minute. But I forgave him. I forgive my divine masculine, the twin flame. I forgive her. She ghosted me. Right? Decided she wanted to be with a transvestite that she had known long before she had known me. And then the transvestite did to her what she did to me. So she used me for sex and money. Then the transvestite turned around and used her for sex and money. And I think faked a pregnancy in order to keep her lured in with her energy or whatever, or attempted to. I don't know if any of that worked again. These are downloads. So I haven't spoken to her in over a year. I have no idea what's going on with that situation. And not concerned with it. I don't care. Because that's their life. Right? And that's not being mean. That's their life. Don't feel guilty about being stern. Okay? Yeah. So, is there anything else to buy in space? When you need to take time for yourself, take time for yourself. And I know it's not always easy. If I had 4 kids in the house, and they're all under 10, and a husband or wife that wasn't helping, or even if they are, that's tough to get some personal time for yourself, let alone time with your spouse, right? Because that needs to be nurtured away from the kids, without the kids. That needs to be nurtured, okay? All right? Don't stay married to somebody for the kids. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. If your love for that person is gone, do not stay for the kids. You don't have to listen. I know there's all kind of situation, blah, 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 blah. From a spiritual standpoint, I'm telling you, all you're doing is prostituting yourself. So what do I mean? You're staying in a situation that is just using you. That's what people do with prostitutes. So you're just prostituting yourself for him if you stay with him because of the kids. You're prostituting yourself, brother, if you stay with her because of the kids. And brother's not a colored thing. Okay? So, be strong about that. Okay? Be strong about that. Again, you have to have a strong cutoff game if you want to fulfill your divine purpose. You have to have a strong cutoff game because people are going to use you, abuse you, run over you, step on you, spit on you, kick you out, slam the door in your face, smear campaign. They're going to try to ruin you. First of all, what you have to realize is it's not the person, it's your spirit that is attracting these demons because you have a mission and you're on it. Right? That's the reason why. So don't look at the individual. And I had to learn this hard lesson. At least for me, it was a hard lesson. Hopefully for you, it's not. Hopefully it's an easy one. But I had to learn to not look at the human being. And I'm going to use my twin as an example. So I had to learn not to look at her. I had to learn that it was the spirit with, and yes, we have a free will. I do understand that. Yes, I do. But it was the spirit in her that was the puppet master, or is the puppet master. It's the spirit of the person that's the puppet master. So when someone is being a narcissist, right? Or maybe they're not full-blown narcissists, but they have narcissistic traits. They're manipulating, they're blackmailing you, right? There's the reason. Because they're trying to stop you from fulfilling whatever your next divine step is. Huh? That's why. The enemy doesn't chase those who are on his side. So if you're not being chased, if you're not filling the pools of the enemy from you pursuing your heart's desires, if you're not feeling that, what does that mean? Right? So, indicators. Pay attention to them. This video is running over an hour. So pay attention to the indicators, okay? And we're looking at 111 on the clock. So, and I never say the time. I don't say that. Like, I don't look at the time and all that sort of thing. But I did that time, and obviously it's on purpose. So, however your day is going, whatever you're involved in, whenever you hear this, if you hear it on 9/27/23 or the 28th or you hear it in 2028, whenever you hear it, I hope it finds fertile ground and soil, and you take from it what's meant for you. Leave everything else there. Right? Because some things you may already be heads and shoulders above, some lessons and things that I speak on, right? Maybe you can show me some things, share some things with me. Okay? So, again, you've been tuned into The Encourager. My name is Nehru. Thank you so much for listening.